This is a lesson on seasons and celestial anchors in a survey of astronomy course. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about what the sky looks like in different seasons. So you'll be able to look at the sky and look for different celestial objects in different seasons. I wanted to call back to my first lesson about this, the orientation of the sky, and all the things that we learned there that would be relevant as we move forward. So I will talk about the celestial sphere. I'll talk about the celestial North Pole, which is not the same as the zenith, and the idea that this celestial sphere rotates. So you're going to see me look at southward facing views and northward facing views, and I'm thinking about as the celestial sphere turns throughout the evening. So keep that in mind as we're thinking about the celestial sphere, is that it turns around the earth. We also talked about celestial reference points and lines. I talked about the zenith. The zenith, notice, is different than the celestial North Pole. The celestial North Pole always points to Polaris, and there is a star there. Whereas the zenith depends on where the person is on the planet. If you're someplace else on the planet, your zenith is not going to be pointing towards the celestial North Pole. So keep that in mind. We'll look at the meridian, keep the meridian in mind, where it divides the sky to east and west. I like to look directly north or directly south, so I will be able to very definitively say this is in the eastern sky or this is in the western sky. Okay, we're looking at the ecliptic. That's one of the main things we're looking at today because it depends on the path of the sun, and the path of the sun is determined by the rotation or the rotation axis of the planet. So also the horizon. Things above the horizon are visible in the sky, and things below the horizon we can't see because the ground is in the way. So keep the horizon in mind when you're looking at these pictures. So for instance, the last lesson I taught you how to find the North Star. Hopefully you're remembering how to find the North Star. Can you see it in this picture? I think I gave a few good hints here. I have north here. It's nice to just go from the northern horizon and go upward, and then you'd be able to find that North Star right there. We also learned about the Big Dipper, and so those are a couple of anchors that we know so far in regard to, what's going on in the sky. Here is the horizon. I'm going to draw this out for here. Here is the horizon, and this is the horizon in stellarium because it has the cardinal directions on that, and it's a little bit lighter. I don't know if you can tell, it's a little bit lighter. The sky is not actually that light at that place. It's just stellarium, and that's how it indicates the horizon in there. The last thing I'm going to point out on this picture, I think the last thing I'm going to point out is the Milky Way. Do you all see the Milky Way here? Here's the Milky Way. Okay, so those are some topics that we covered in a previous lesson that we're keeping anchoring. I mentioned the ecliptic. We talked about the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path that the sun appears to take around the celestial sphere each year. All right, and this is the picture we looked at. The moon and the planets also roughly or even exactly follow this line as well. And we know all the zodiacs are on this circle. The people throughout time noticed that the sun follows this, and then they gave each one of these star clusters a specific name for each time of the year where the sun is in that constellation. So let's keep moving forward. The seasons and the solstices I had mentioned in another Unit 2 lesson are caused by the relative alignment of Earth's axis of rotation with the sun. Okay, sometimes it points away, sometimes it's neutral, and sometimes it points towards. It depends on the time of the year and where the Earth is in the path as it goes around the sun. All right. Sometimes it points away over here. Sometimes it points towards. Notice throughout the year, the axis points at the same location in space. Off this direction, off this direction. All of those point in the same direction, but relative to the sun, it points a different way. Okay, so it's relative to the sun. Why do humans even care? Well, it gives us the seasons. It affects the intensity or the amount of energy per square meter that we receive on the surface of the planet, giving us this weather effect, the amount of heat that we're receiving on the surface of the planet and how warm it is. We're going to call specific points in the orbit of the Earth around the sun. We're going to call specific points a solstice or an equinox. And there's a summer and winter solstice and a vernal and autumnal equinox. And those happen in the northern hemisphere and they happen in the southern hemisphere, except opposites. So if it's the summer solstice for the northern hemisphere, it's actually the winter solstice for the southern hemisphere. And the vernal and autumnal equinoxes work the same. So let's look at a little bit more specifically about what's going on here. And what I'm going to focus on is the ecliptic in the sky. So that's sort of the theme of this thread of lessons for me, is what's going on in the sky. And so the Earth going around the sun causes the sun to be at different places in the sky throughout the year. And the ecliptic is where the path that the sun follows, so the ecliptic will be at different places throughout the year. So that's where I'm founding this lesson, that's the foundation of it, is where is the ecliptic in the sky. So what we're going to notice throughout the year, the tilt of the Earth's rotational axis changes relative to the sun. I chose a point in time here. This is December. This is where the Earth is in December. The axis tilts maximally away from the sun in the northern hemisphere. It's away from the sun. And you can see that light coming from the sun is going to be more direct in the southern hemisphere than it is in the northern hemisphere. And that's represented over here in this picture. In the northern hemisphere at our latitude, and I put a box, I put some highlight over here. You can change the latitude. So when I'm looking at this latitude, it's this red line here. It's receiving light at a very steep angle. It's not receiving very head-on light, very direct light from the sun. And so in December, that's where it starts getting colder. We have a colder season then. Okay. And remember that the Earth's orbit is essentially circular. It's slightly elliptical, but not elliptical for us to tell any difference in regard to distance from the sun. Okay, so what I wanted to look at here is where is the ecliptic in the sky? And so what I just did was I just found where the sun was in the sky at noon on the winter solstice. So we're going to note this is the winter solstice and we're looking at noon on the winter solstice. And I put a center mark here for the sun in the sky. Here's the ecliptic. In stellarium, I had stellarium mark the ecliptic on here. And I put a mark above the southern horizon, exactly at noon, above the southern horizon. That's where the sun is, right there. Okay, you can see there's a few planets around here and the moon. That's fine. I'm fine with that. And we're noticing the screenshot from the app here. It's winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere. Okay, so let's progress in time. I'm going to move towards spring. You can see that this is the spring equinox, the vernal equinox, and we are at noon on that day. I pointed directly southward, and we can see that the sun is here. I put a center mark. I also kept the center mark from in the winter. Here's the winter location of the sun, and here's the spring location of the sun. That's interesting, right? And we know that as we move towards summer, we're going to be getting more direct sunlight, which means that the sun will be higher up in the sky. So in the winter, it's lower in the sky. We see the sun lower in the sky, and then it starts going up as we move into spring and summer. Okay. The ecliptic will also follow that trend because the sun follows the ecliptic. Here's summer. It's barely on the screen. I kept the same view so you all wouldn't get confused. And so there's the sun. Remember that this is where the sun was in the winter. This is where the sun was in the spring. And now in the summer, we can see that the sun is really high in the sky and the ecliptic line is much higher in the sky than it is in the spring and the winter. We move on to fall. There's fall, there's September. the autumnal equinox. And so we moved up here, and then up here, there's the summer, and then we move back down for fall. It's more down, and we can see the ecliptic has a lower latitude in the sky. Okay, and then when we get all the way back to winter again, and you can see this will be December of this year. I'm recording this in almost October, September of 2025. So in December of 2025, that's where the sun is going to be back down at the lowest point for where I am on the planet of the Earth. So this will be the northern hemisphere, just south of Seattle. So when we look at seasons at the equator, let's look at seasons at the equator. Seasons at the equator are a little bit different than northern and southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere are going to have this cycle of cold, medium, hot, medium, cold, medium, hot, medium, cold as it goes through the seasons, right? They're going to have a cold season and they're going to have a hot season. At the equator, however, because the equator is at the middle of the earth, when, for instance, in December, when the northern hemisphere is having winter and the southern hemisphere is having summer, the equator is not receiving light at a direct angle from the sun. So we're going to note that because in the next month over, or in the next season over, so this will be in March, okay, that is when the equator is receiving direct sunlight from the sun. So this is going to be the cool season. I guess I should name this accurately by people I know. This is going to be what they call the hot season. It's still hot at the equator, okay? So it's hot at the equator. But then when they move to light being directly on, this is the more hot season. We're getting more direct sunlight, so it's going to be more hot. When we move over here, there's going to be a hot season, and then over here, when we get to September, there's going to be a more hot season. So it may go a little bit against your intuition that the equator should have 4 seasons. Actually, it has 4 seasons, but two of them are same and 2 of them are also the same, and that's what people who live near the equator say, is that there's hot season and more hot season. There's a wet season and a dry season, okay? So interesting. I wanted to remind you of the ecliptic, the zodiac on the ecliptic. As I move towards highlighting for you what's going on in the sky in the different seasons, I wanted to remind us of the ecliptic. All right, we looked at this in a previous lesson, and I had this picture from the OpenStax textbook about how zodiacs, the constellations, are determined for like astrology. In June, here's the Earth in June. When we look from Earth to the sun in June and we look past it, we are going to find Taurus. So if you were born in the first part of June, you are going to have an astrological sign of Taurus. And so people throughout the years had noticed that. If we're here, if the Earth is here, we look this direction, we're going to notice that that's the astrological sign of Aquarius. So that's sort of how the zodiac works. So these are important constellations as we move throughout the year, and I'm going to call them celestial anchors. They have been celestial anchors for human beings throughout the history of astronomy, I'm sure. On some level, people had noticed in the sky what was going on with the different star clusters. In different seasons, then, we see different stars and different clusters. The zodiac signs of the winter months are not visible during the winter months. Why is that? Well, let's look here. June, let's see, across from June, Earth will be right here in December. So I'll label that December. So when in December I look in the sky at night, I'm going to look at Taurus. Do you see that? Or if I'm in November, I'm going to see Aries. If I'm in January, I'm going to see Gemini at night. When we look at the sun, when we're in December, we're going to notice that, Ophiuchus is up there. But more often we're going to see that it's going to correspond to Sagittarius or Capricorn later in December, right? So what we're seeing is the opposite zodiacs, and their associated stars will be visible throughout the night because those are the ones that are going to be facing away from the sun. And we're also going to have various other constellations and stars that are notable in different seasons. So I outlined these during this lesson. And hopefully this will give you a little bit of a tour of the sky in different seasons. I'm not claiming to be an astronomer. My astronomy teacher, Dave Lindenberg, very, very interesting man. He was also a physics major, a physicist, taught me astronomy, and we had a planetarium. It was very nice to be able to go into a planetarium and sit there, and he would make the celestial sphere move on the top of that planetarium, and we had to do quizzes and everything in there. So the best I have for you is a stellarium, and we had looked at where the sun was on the winters. Right? This is winter. This is in December, the winter solstice. Okay. So this is facing the sun. When we look at the sun on the winter, this is noon. Notice that the sky is not dark at noon on any solstice, any day of the year. It's not dark. What I did was I took out the sunlight so that we could look at the sun and see also the background. You can see the Milky Way is here, and there's different planets in the sky. But if we actually look towards the sun, we wouldn't see any of these. We wouldn't be able to see Venus or Mercury or anything like that, or the moon even, because there's too much sunlight in the sky for us to be able to get light from those other things. But what I'm going to do is not point towards the sun anymore. I am going to go to midnight. So do you see how I went to midnight down here? We're on the same day, but we're at midnight. 0000 will be midnight. And when we look up at the sky at midnight, it's going to be dark. I mean, in theory, unless there's clouds or you live in a city and there's lots of ambient light, you're going to be able to see the sky because it's dark at midnight. Okay, so that was the time I chose, and I wanted to highlight things in the sky, and you can notice that this is the winter solstice. This is the winter solstice. I'm looking south, and this is in 2024. You can see that's 2024. So just to orient us, there's the south, there's the southern horizon. I put the eastern horizon all the way over here, and I put the western horizon all the way over there. And what I want you to remember about the celestial sphere rotating, right? It rotates once a day, right? It takes a whole day to go around. What happens when we look at the southern sky, all of the objects in the southern sky will rotate from left to right. That should make sense, right? The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So the sun will follow the ecliptic across the sky and will rise in the east and set in the west. So all of the stars, all the celestial objects also do the same thing. They also do the same thing. They will rise in the east and they will set in the west. Okay, so Mars here, you can see Mars. Mars rose in the east. The moon right here is rising in the east, and it will set in the west at some point later in the evening. Okay, so keep that in mind and that orientation as we look at the next slides or in this slide. So when you look at this slide, there might be a few objects that you recognize. Stellarium has definitely identified and marked some of them. It marked the moon, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus is up here, Pleiades. So what you may note right away, your eyes may be used to it from my last lesson, is Orion's belt and Orion. Do you see Orion's belt and Orion here? So there's Orion, okay. Directly facing south on the winter solstice, you should be able to see Orion in the sky below the ecliptic. There it is. Betelgeuse and Rigel are in Orion. What we're going to remember is that the belt in Orion points towards our lovely star, our brightest star in the sky other than our sun, the brightest star, Sirius. And you may also remember that the Pleiades, and we also have here Aldebaran. I can put Aldebaran in here. This is Aldebaran. Aldebaran. There's a bull over here with the Pleiades. The Pleiades is the heart. So you may be able to orient yourself to those objects in the sky in the winter months. So if it's in the middle of the sky here, during December, I believe in November it'd be like right here. So you would be able to see Orion in November, and maybe even October it'd be rising over here at midnight in October. And so it would slowly move across the sky in this direction. In January, I would expect it to be here. Maybe February. You can see how Orion would be visible some of the year, but not all of the year. Okay, so Orion is what we consider a winter constellation. Let me bring up this picture. I like this screenshot a little bit better because it helps us see an anchor on some of these constellations and stars that we're not used to yet. So as I look across the ecliptic, I'm facing south. On the winter solstice, I'm going to see Leo. Do you all see Leo here? I also have a crab. The Cancer is here. And I have Gemini. So let's talk about these three. I consider these the summer constellations, the summer zodiacs. Right? Leo is August, Cancer is June, Cancer is July, Gemini is June. Those are summer months to me. And so when we look in these constellations, I'm going to point out a few stars. In Leo, we have the star Regulus. In Gemini, the head of the two people in Gemini is Castor and Pollux. Okay, so in the winter, you should be able to see these stars and these constellations. If you find Leo, you can see Regulus. Regulus is right on the ecliptic right here. There's no really important stars in Cancer, but when we get to Gemini, we have Castor and Pollux. So you might want to remember those, Castor and Pollux. We had, like I pointed out before, I'm using pink for constellations here. Orion is here. You all see Orion. In Orion, I'm going to remind you that we have Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is the shoulder, and then Rigel is the foot down there. Those are two bright stars in the sky. You'll study them later in the quarter. The belt points towards our star Sirius. So I'm going to circle Sirius down here. I can write it out, Sirius. I can see it, but I don't know if Sirius. I don't know if you can see it. Another one over here is Procyon. Sirius is in Canis Major and Procyon is in Canis Minor. And you might be able to find Procyon because it is kind of a bright star in the sky there. And you can see that Betelgeuse, Rigel, and Sirius make this sort of box here. And you'll be able to see those in the winter. They'll move more this way as we move to January and February at midnight, but they are definitely there in the winter. Let's see what else is going on. We have Taurus, and I had pointed this out on the previous slide. We're going to have Aldebaran. Let me change my color here. Aldebaran is the eye of the bull, and then we have Pleiades, which is the heart of the bull. Pleiades, not too hard to remember how to spell. Underneath Pleiades here, I wrote we have Aries. Over here is Pisces. So along the ecliptic, we're going to have the zodiac signs. Do I see anything else in here that I wanted to point out? Yeah, I do see something here I want to point out. Capella's up here. Capella is a star that you'll see at different times of the year. We can see it's near the zenith here. And so it's a brighter star in the sky. So that's a brief tour of the south sky on the winter solstice. Let's look north. Let's look north on the winter solstice now. Notice we're still on the winter solstice. We're still at midnight, but now we're facing north. Okay. Can you find the North Star? I'm going to follow the meridian upward, and I am going to find it's the bright star on the meridian here. You may have looked for the Big Dipper. Can you find the Big Dipper? Oh, that's interesting. I made a star. Can you find the Big Dipper? in here. It's in here. It's in here. Do you see the Big Dipper right there? All right. So it's pointing a different direction than when we first learned it. This is the direction it points in December, and you can see those two end stars point towards the North Star. Are there any other things you can recognize in here? I'm not as familiar with the north sky as I am the south sky for some reason, but we can look through here and see what's going on. Let me get my North Star going here again. There's Ursa Minor, and we have Ursa Major. Ursa Major. And we have the Big Dipper. I'll just say BD, Big Dipper right there. What else do we have going on? I'm moved right over here. I'm seeing Leo. Leo's right there, that lion. It's on the ecliptic. What I'm going to note in Leo, and I already talked about this in the southern sky, and technically we can see that it is the southern sky. Regulus is in Leo, and I'm going to mark that here. Let me get a different color. I need a different color. This line goes through the zenith, which divides it into north and south. I guess I'll call the north and the south. So we're looking at the north sky, and so I'm going to call anything in the north sky on this side of that line, and anything in the south side, that side of that line. So we're seeing Leo is in between the north and the south. Regulus is definitely in the south sky, and I had talked about it on the previous slide. So there's Leo and Regulus. We're also going to note over here, right here, this woman, this is Virgo. Virgo, you're going to become more familiar with as she moves through the sky. What else do we have? Virgo, Arcturus. Arcturus is a bright star. It's not above the horizon. Do you see it's not above the horizon? But as the night sky progresses, it will rise in the eastern horizon. Okay? Remember that when I look south, the sun goes from east to west. Also, or the celestial sphere goes from east to west. When I look north, the celestial sphere will go from east to west, and this is the east over here. This is east, this is west. So when I look at Arcturus, it's below the horizon, but it will rise above the horizon as the night progresses. And in January and February, it will be above the horizon at midnight. So I wanted to point that out. Arcturus is in the constellation Bootes. Please don't say booties. It is not booties. I think everybody thinks that's hilarious. It's actually Bootes. There's a double dot above that O. I think it's an umlaut, and you say it in a very specific way, Bootes. So that's that constellation Bootes. Arcturus is in the constellation Bootes. What do we have? What else do we have going on here? I am going to point out that there is a swan right here. Do you see the swan right here? The swan is called Cygnus. Okay. And right next to Cygnus is the constellation Lyra. And I point those out because there's two stars in there that I want you all to anchor on. At midnight here at the solstice, you can still see Deneb. This is the star Deneb. It's one of the brighter stars in the sky. And Vega's here. I'm going to pin these for us now because they're going to become more important in the summer. What else do we have going on in the sky? I don't think much else. I don't have really anything else highlighted that I wanted to show you. Oh, that's not true. What do we have over here? Let's follow the ecliptic around. I see Aries here. I see Pisces here. Pisces, there's a couple of fish. You see the couple of fish? All right, so those are up there. Another thing that I'm going to point out here, there's a little circle. Some people like to know where Andromeda is. Andromeda. Because that is where our nearest galaxy is, the Andromeda Galaxy. The other thing I want to point out here, you can see the horse with the wing. This is Pegasus. Pegasus is in the sky. It is a box. All right, so as the night sky progresses and things on this side of the sky set, right? Arcturus is rising. This is a rising star, as opposed to Pegasus. Would be a setting constellation. This is rising over on this side and setting over here. So it's setting below the horizon. Pegasus is a big box. Andromeda is here. Another thing you might see up in the sky that I like pointing out is Cassiopeia. Some people say Cassiopeia. It is a W in the sky. It's a sitting on a chair. So that's Cassiopeia. So interesting things in the sky here. Winter star. So let's kind of get a summary. Winter stars and star clusters. In the south, we're looking for Orion. If we see Orion, we know we're going to see Sirius. If we see one dog, we're going to see the other dog, and we're going to see Procyon. If we see Orion, we're going to see Taurus with Aldebaran at the eye and Pleiades at the heart. Leo is up there with Regulus, and Gemini with the twins are Castor and Pollux are the stars in there. In the north, we saw Virgo. I didn't point out Spica. Let's look at another picture of the sky to look at Spica. But Spica is a star in Virgo. I pointed out Boötes and Arcturus, one of the more brighter stars in the sky. Okay. Let's move to the spring. All right. So we saw the sun moved up in the southern sky in the spring. Let's go to midnight on the vernal equinox. So you can see that this is March and we're at midnight. So vernal equinox, we're going to look at the sky here. What would you be able to identify in the sky here? There's a constellation I think you should be able to identify near the western horizon. Can you see it in the western horizon? Over here, we pointed out Orion. Do you see Orion here? The belt and the two stars, we have Betelgeuse and we have Rigel over here. Betelgeuse and Rigel. If we have Orion, then we also have Canis Major and Sirius. If we have Canis Major and Sirius, we also have Canis Minor and Procyon. So they're visible in the winter and as we move into the spring, but we can see that it's setting. They're setting in the spring. Remember, this is the southern direction, and all of the celestial sphere will rotate from east to west. This is east over here, and this is west over here. Okay, so from east to west. And so Orion is setting. Orion will not be visible for very much longer in the sky as we move from spring to summer. So Orion is what we call a winter constellation, and the stars in Orion are winter stars. We look for those stars in the winter, but as it gets into spring and summer, we're not going to be able to see them. Okay, they would be in the sky when the sun is in the sky is what happens. Okay, what else is going on here? Let's look at the pictures. I think you might not be able to see anything else. I guess I talked about Arcturus on the previous slide. There's Arcturus. Let's talk about it on this slide. So Arcturus, remember, is in Boötes. So there's Arcturus. It was down here, is down below the horizon in the winter for the winter solstice, but as we move towards spring, it's going to be higher up in the sky after dusk and heading towards midnight. Okay, so there's Boötes. What else do we have going on? I guess Virgo is here. I put a pin in Virgo. There's Virgo. What I want to point out in Virgo, there's Arcturus and Boötes, and this star right here in Virgo is called Spica. Okay, so if you find Virgo along the ecliptic, you'll see Spica along the ecliptic. Very interesting there. What else do we have going on? Over in the eastern horizon here, you're going to see, this is Libra, right? If we see Virgo, the next one over is Libra, and then you can see the Scorpion down here, Scorpio. So if we let time move forward, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., Scorpio is going to rise above the horizon here. It's going to come above. And what I need to point out in Scorpio, there's an important star in Scorpio here. This is Antares, the star Antares. Okay. What else do we have going on? Let's go the other direction along the ecliptic. So we went Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. Do you see Leo? Do you see Leo up there? There's Leo. And the star in Leo is Regulus. So hopefully you're remembering some of these as we go along. The repetition, that's what Dave did. Dave Lindenberg that did was repetition, repetition, repetition. So we're going to look at the sky in different seasons, in different places, and be able to identify them. So Spica, Regulus, we can see these stars along the ecliptic that are important. Regulus is a star in Leo. We have our little crab here. Here's our Cancer. Gemini is the twins. Gemini, you remember the two stars in Gemini, the twin stars? We have Castor here, and we have Castor with an O, Pollux, Pollux, P-O-L-L-U-X, Pollux. So those are in Gemini. I'm going to notice all the way over here, we still have, from the previous slide, I had identified Orion. There's Orion. So we have Procyon here. There's Canis Minor, there's Canis Major with Sirius, we have Betelgeuse, and we have Rigel. What else do we have in here? Taurus is over here. It's behind my head, I guess. You can barely see this right here is Aldebaran. In the eye of the bull. Okay, so those are spring. When I look towards the south on the spring equinox at midnight, I'm going to see these all of these celestial objects. Really interesting here. Okay. When I look north, let's look north. Can you find the North Star? What else can you see in the north sky? If you're like me, I am not as familiar with the north sky, but that's all right. Let's look what's going on here. Did you find the Big Dipper in here? The Big Dipper is visible all year round, but it moves. So we see in the spring, the Big Dipper is more towards the zenith. It's closer to the zenith here. Here's the zenith. There's the Big Dipper. Ursa Minor's here as well in this area. Do we see anything else that we really recognize? Maybe. I don't see anything really in the northern sky that I'm really noticing here, but my eyes aren't as trained maybe as an astronomer. Let's look at get a little bit of help from Stellarium. There's a North Star, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, Big Dipper. We have the Big Dipper here. We have the Small Dipper here, Small Dipper. What else do we have going on? Draco, I think Draco's interesting. It's always visible. You can see it going around the North Star throughout the year. What else do we have? Cassiopeia. Do you see Cassiopeia here? We have a person sitting on the chair. There's Cassiopeia. I'll just write Cass here. Okay. What else do we have? I see Taurus. Do you all see Taurus here? Taurus. So Taurus looks to me to be setting in the west. Remember when we look north, this is the east and this is the west. So the sky moves in this direction throughout the night. Taurus is setting at this point. Taurus is going below the horizon. When I look at Taurus, I have the eye of the bull is Aldebaran. Aldebaran. Okay. And we also have Pleiades. Pleiades is back here. If we wanted to, we'd have to look towards this direction for Orion, but we talked about that on the southern sky. I'm not going to talk about that here on the northern sky. Let's look at the ecliptic. Let's start at the ecliptic. On the previous slide, we talked about Gemini. There's Gemini up here, Gemini with Castor and Pollux. I'm just going to call the most left one is Pollux and the right one is Castor. So that's how I remember them, Castor and Pollux. What else do we have going on here? Cassiopeia. I see a fish down here. I guess Pisces is down here. This is Aries, but they're below the horizon. You can see, you can't see these in the spring. They're below the horizon. Let's look on the other side. I think it might be interesting to point out Arcturus. We know Arcturus. That's a star that we're becoming more familiar with, is Arcturus. I'm trying to get a different color here for stars, the different stars versus the constellations. Arcturus, do you remember the constellation for Arcturus? Boötes is the constellation for Arcturus. I'm going to note for you all that this is Hercules. Hercules is in the sky. I look down here a little bit lower. I see Lyra. This is Lyra. And I didn't point out before, we're going to get more into the summer. This is where the rising stars, so these are rising in the spring. There'll be more in the sky in the summer. Lyra contains Vega. All right, Vega is beginning spring star, and then as we move, it'll be high in the sky in the summer. So there's Vega. Another thing that I'm going to point out down here is that's rising. You can see that this is also rising. Is this constellation here is Cygnus, the swan. Cygnus is called the summer swan. It's really interesting that it is a summer constellation. It's rising in the spring, and then when we get to summer, you'll see it's more solidly in the middle of the sky when we get to summer. Okay. In Cygnus, we're going to remember that Cygnus holds the star Deneb. Okay, so Deneb is in there. What else do I want to point out in here? We have Andromeda's setting. Perseus. I guess this is Perseus right here. I noted that this is Perseus. So those are some interesting spring stars and constellations in the north. I have a summary here. South, there's a whole bunch going on in the spring. Okay, and in the north, definitely now we're beginning to see Cygnus and Lyra. These are going to be more prominent in the summer. Okay, again, if we're seeing Orion, we're definitely seeing Canis Major and Canis Minor. We saw that over on the western horizon here. Gemini, Leo, there's a lot of things going on in the spring. Let's move to summer. Summer, remember, we had the sun move up to the highest point in the sky. This is winter, and then this is spring, and then now it's in summer. Summer, it's in the highest point that it reaches in the sky. The ecliptic is also. So for the northern hemisphere, I wanted to point out that on the summer solstice at midnight in the southern sky. So you're going to note that the southern sky is here. This is the June at midnight. So we're June at midnight. Is there anything you notice in the southern sky at midnight in June? Is there anything going on that you recognize? This points out Arcturus. We may already be familiar with Boötes is the constellation of Arcturus. That might be a bright star you see in the sky. Another bright star you'll see in the sky is Vega. When you look that direction, you may see Vega up there. And we just talked about Vega. Vega is in Lyra. Another thing that you might notice in here is this star. I'm pointing out this star. It's a pretty bright star. This star is Altair. Okay, so there's some bright stars in the sky. There's nothing specifically like pattern like you might see with Orion right away, but you're definitely seeing some bright stars in the southern sky in the summer. Let's have Stellarium show us the constellations and give us a little bit more of a leg up. So we're still looking south in June at midnight. Okay, so let's look what's going on here. I'm going to note the ecliptic. Do you all see the ecliptic here? We have Virgo. There's Virgo. Virgo is near Boötes. We labeled Boötes before, and we know there's stars. There's Arcturus. And then Virgo contains Spica. I had mentioned Spica before. Those are both setting over on this side. Remember, this is the west, and so things set in the west and they rise in the east. What other important things do I notice in the sky? Arcturus. Let's go back to the stars that we looked at on the previous one. Here's Cygnus. I need to point out Cygnus. Cygnus is a summer constellation, and it is marked by the star Deneb. There's Deneb. Okay, there's Deneb. I also pointed out Altair. There's Altair. Altair is a bright star in the summer sky that people anchor and associate with the summer. And it's in the constellation Aquila. All right, I believe that's like an eagle, maybe. I think that's an eagle, Altair. And then the other star I'm going to point out is Vega, which is in Lyra. I pointed that out on the previous slide. And so when I learned astronomy, Dave pointed out the summer triangle. This is what is called the summer triangle. You may have heard the summer triangle before. And so these three stars, and you can see that they create a triangle, are clearly visible in the summer. In the summer sky at night, right? So, summer triangle, how I remember this is my teacher's name was Dave, and it's Deneb, Altair, Vega, Dave. So Dave liked to call the summer triangle his triangle, the Dave triangle. So Deneb, Altair, Vega, that's a summer triangle. Cygnus is a summer constellation. Lyra is a summer constellation, and Aquila is a summer constellation. So when you're looking at southward in the sky, see if you can find that summer triangle with those three bright stars. You might not be able to see the constellations, but you'll be able to see those three bright stars create that triangle. Arcturus will be to the right of them over there, Arcturus, and you may even be able to see Spica. Once you find Arcturus, you should be able to find Spica down there in Virgo. All right, what else do we have going on? I wanted to point out. I see more along the ecliptic. I marked Virgo on the ecliptic. Leo is leaving the picture. Leo and Regulus are leaving the picture. But when I look back this way, I have a Libra, Virgo, Libra. I have a Scorpio. Do you all see the scorpion there? Scorpio. What I'm going to mark in Scorpio is the head of the Scorpio is marked by a star called Antares. Antares is in Scorpio. So if you find Spica, you may be able to see Antares, depending on how far you are above the equator. Antares should be low in the south sky in the summer. What else do we have along the ecliptic? I see Sagittarius. Do you see that half man, half horse, Sagittarius with an arrow? I see Capricorn, the little ram goat here. And then this one right here is Aquarius. Okay, Aquarius is rising. Remember, things rise in the east and they set in the west. Okay, so Aquarius is rising. So as you move into August, September, Aquarius will be more up in the sky, will be Capricorn. Okay, and all of these things will rotate from left to right across the sky. Okay, so that's the south sky in the summer at night. Important things, that summer triangle. I think the summer triangle is very important to know in regard to the south sky in the summer. Antares, Arcturus, Spica, those I think are bright stars you'd be able to see in the sky in the summer as well. When we look northward in the sky in the summer, you see the North Star. Do you see the Big Dipper? Remember, the Big Dipper was here in December and here in the spring, and now we see it over here in the summer. Okay, so there's the Big Dipper. Boop, boop. There it is, the Big Dipper. We know that this is the Little Dipper, the Small Dipper. The Little Dipper is over here. What else do you see? I actually see Cassiopeia right away. I see Cassiopeia. Do you see Cassiopeia there? Cassiopeia looks like a W. In the summer, Cassiopeia looks like a W up in the sky. You may be able to see that once you find the North Star. You might be able to find Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia. All right, there's Cassiopeia. What else do we see? I see a couple of stars maybe marked out for us. Capella, Vega, we already talked about in the southern sky. right? There's the line. It's over in the southern sky. Are there any other stars or constellations that you might recognize up here? We can let stellarium help us a little bit. We have Ursa Major and we have Ursa Minor. There's Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. There's our North Star. There is Cassiopeia, like I had marked out before. What else do we have going on? Yes. Do you all see Cygnus here? There's that summer swan, Cygnus. I had already talked about it in the southern sky. Again, it's kind of in the southern sky, but you can notice Deneb here is actually in this northern sky at this time. All right, there's Deneb and Cygnus. I think that would be the bright star that you might see other than the North Star in the northern sky during the summer. We can look along the ecliptic. You might see Leo. Do you all see Leo over here? And if you're looking for Leo, you would look for Regulus. Regulus is in its leg here, Regulus. But this is a setting. This is setting. All right, for this is east over here and west over here, and it rises in the east, sets in the west. The celestial sphere moves from east to west, which means Leo is setting at this time, and Regulus is going below the horizon at this time. I can notice a few other constellations along the ecliptic. Let's see, there's Virgo. We talked about Virgo over in the southern sky. And we have things below the horizon here. There's not really much else above the horizon. Here's Pegasus. Pegasus is here. You can draw this box in here. You might be able to see Pegasus. Once you find Cassiopeia, you might be able to find Pegasus. Also over here, I do believe this is Aquarius. Is this Aquarius over here? It's along the ecliptic. I'm trying to figure out like along the ecliptic what's going on. I definitely see some constellations under here. Yeah, this is Aquarius. I know that's Aquarius. This is Pisces here. Do you see this fish? So those are rising. Those will become more apparent in the middle of the night, 3, 4, 5 a.m. They'll move through the sky, but they're rising at this point at midnight. So we'll keep that in mind as we head towards fall. Whatever's rising in the summer will be more prominent in the middle of the sky in the fall. So when I look at the summary of these, looking at the southern and northern sky in the summer, we looked at the summer triangle. I guess I called Cygnus in the northern sky, but along with Altair and Vega, right, we have the summer triangle. I don't have it written out here. Summer triangle, which is why I'm writing it out. Dave. Deneb, Altair, Vega is our summer triangle, and you can look for that in the summer. That's a summer star cluster and constellation, or summer star cluster, I guess I'll just call it. We have Arcturus with Boötes. We have Virgo with Spica. We have Scorpio with Antares. You'd see all those in the south. To the north, Draco's there. I really didn't talk about Draco. I can go back for a second to our slide. Draco is pretty much up in the sky. You might train your eyes to see it. My eyes aren't trained to see it. It's a constellation that's very close to the North Star, so you'll see it in the sky throughout the year. And just like the Big Dipper changes orientation throughout the year, Draco will change orientation throughout the year. Along with Cassiopeia, it stays in the sky the whole year, but it changes orientation. And so you can see those. Pegasus, you might be able to find the box of Pegasus. One more season here. Let's move to fall. We're going to remember that the ecliptic starts in the winter low. It moves up to the middle, goes up high, and then comes back down in the fall. So we're in the fall here. The sun is medium height in the sky. Okay. When I look in the southern sky in the fall, is there anything that you recognize in the southern sky in the fall? For me, there is one thing that I'm looking at here in September. You can see in September at midnight, I am going to notice that I saw this over here. This is a star. This is one of our brighter stars in the sky. It's next to Pleiades. Pleiades is is written out here. Pleiades. You remember the name of that star? Aldebaran is in the constellation. I'll write out Aldebaran while you remember the constellation. Aldebaran is in the constellation Taurus. Remember, these are all in Taurus. So you might be getting used to looking for Aldebaran and the Pleiades in the sky. Once you find Aldebaran and Pleiades, you have Taurus, which means that Orion is just off the screen. So I'm going to remind you, looking southward, that the sky is going, this is east and this is west, so the sky is going to rotate in this direction. So Taurus and Orion are rising right now. This is rising over here, and this is setting over here. Is there any other stars or constellations that you're noticing? They noted Vega for us. There's Vega up there. I know Vega is in Lyra. Lyra is over here. But I can't tell you the shape of it or which direction. What else do I see? If we're in the fall, we see Vega, we should be able to see the summer triangle. Can we identify the other two stars in the summer triangle? I see Vega here. I know how to spell Dave, D-A-V, and so it's in a very specific order. So Vega is further right. So if you think about how you write out Dave, we're going to go from left to right. Here's Deneb. That is Deneb there. Deneb. And then we're going to look downward and we're going to find Altair. And then we'll look upward and find Vega. And then there's our summer triangle. So in the middle of the night, remember in June, Vega was more over here. Remember that? But now it's moved across the sky. As we move through the year, it's going to move across the sky. I'm trying to undo there we go. It's going to move across the sky, and it's going to still be in the sky, but it's going to be setting. Do you see how it's going to be setting? It's going to be a setting star cluster, but we can still see it and recognize Deneb, Altair, and Vega. So looking for that star cluster there. Let's get a little help from our good friend Stellarium. There's Taurus. I'll write out Taurus there. There's Aldebaran there. Pleiades, we got that. We have Deneb and Cygnus. So let me write out Cygnus here. Do you see that swan? Cygnus. Cygnus is the summer swan, but we also see it a little bit for a few months, a month or so in the fall. We have Altair in Aquila, our eagle, Aquila. That's Altair. I can write Altair on here. Altair. And then we have Vega up here. Vega is in Lyra, and that's our summer triangle, Lyra. Again, let's draw that triangle. We have our Dave triangle, summer triangle. There we go. What else do we see up here? I don't see any other stars I really want to point out. There's no other stars here. I don't like those lines. They're not straight. What else do I see? Well, I'm going to follow the ecliptic. I'm just going to follow the ecliptic. If I've identified Taurus, I might be able to find Aries right next to it. Do you all see Aries right next to it? And then I see some fish here. We're going to have Pisces in the fall sky. We have Aquarius pouring the water. We have Capricorn, that little goat there sitting. We have Sagittarius setting. Sagittarius is at the horizon right now. So as we move into the winter, we won't be able to see Capricorn and Sagittarius. They will be in the sun will be in those constellations, and they won't be visible because they'll be during the day. What else do I see up here? I don't see much else up here. We can look at I guess I see Andromeda is up here. And I say because there's a galaxy in Andromeda that you might be interested in looking at. I also see, is this the box? I think this is a box. Is this Pegasus? Pegasus. All right. So in the fall, Pegasus is higher up in the sky. I guess I would look for Pisces or Andromeda. I'd look for that box that Pegasus has for its body. Okay. Let's look at the northern sky, getting used to finding the North Star. There's north. I'm going to look directly north. There's the North Star. Can you find the Big Dipper? The Big Dipper started here, and throughout the year it's moved around, and so you should be able to see the Big Dipper is lower in the northern sky in the fall. All right, there it is. It's still pointing towards the North Star, but it's changed orientation. Cassiopeia is approximately across from it. You might be able to look past the North Star and then be able to find Cassiopeia. There's Cassiopeia, a W in the sky, Cassiopeia. Which also brings us to Pegasus. Pegasus was a box up here, right? Andromeda is over here as well. Are there any other constellations you can kind of see in the sky? I'm seeing Orion rising over here. Do you see Orion rising? Orion. This is the east and this is the west. So the sky will move, the celestial sphere will move in that direction as the night progresses. Let's get some help from Stellarium. I was wrong about Pegasus. Pegasus is over here, I guess, up top. That's not Pegasus. We definitely have the North Star. We can identify the Big Dipper here with Ursa Major. We have Ursa Minor. We have Cassiopeia. There's Cassiopeia with the W. Okay. Draco is here. Remember I mentioned the dragon. It moves relative, just like the Big Dipper. It follows the Big Dipper through the sky throughout the year. What else am I noticing? I'm noticing the ecliptic over here. Usually the ecliptic holds some stars and that sort of thing that I'm interested in. I see the Pleiades and Aldebaran rising in the east. I mentioned those, I think, on the previous slide. They're rising in the east. This is rising. All right, rising and setting. Over here, they're rising in the east. So Taurus is over here along the ecliptic. If you see Taurus rising, you know that Orion will be Orion. I guess Orion is a larger one here. Orion will be rising soon too, and it contains Betelgeuse and it contains Regulus. Regulus hasn't come up yet, but it's coming up soon. I also see along the ecliptic here, I just noticed out of the corner of my eye, I see Gemini here. There's Gemini. And if you remember before, we haven't talked about these for a few slides, a few seasons, but now we see Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux are rising in the northeastern sky. There'll be more in the sky. They'll come up in the sky throughout the night. And I guess in September, October, November, you're going to see Gemini in the northern sky in the fall. Okay. What else do we have going on? We have Aldebaran. Capella is here. Capella is a bright star in the northern sky. This is really the only slide that I mentioned. This constellation, Auriga, has Capella in it. Capella is a kind of bright star. We're going to study that later on. Along the ecliptic here, I had, Cancer is down here. It'll be rising. Gemini, Taurus. I see Aries in the sky. So you might become more familiar with Aries. Over on this side of the sky, I'm going to notice Vega. Vega's up in the sky here, which means that Lyra is right here. I talked about it on the previous slide. We can still see our summer swan Cygnus, and it has the star Deneb in it. Deneb. Okay, this is Vega. Deneb and Vega are up there. So if you're looking kind of north, you might be able to look up towards the zenith and see Deneb and Vega up there. I don't think there's really anything else I want to point out on in the north in the fall. So here's a summary slide on that. In the south, we're going to have our winter constellations coming up. All right, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Aries is going to be in the sky as well, right? Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn. Sagittarius is setting. It's setting over here. We pointed out Pegasus and Aquila. The summer triangle, we still pointed out the summer triangle. I guess I put the summer triangle, I put those stars in the north and Aquila in the south. but you can see it here. I'm going to put it in turquoise on here. There's that summer triangle. You can kind of, Deneb and Vigo will be on the near the zenith, and then you'll look for Altair and you'll be able to see that triangle in the sky. Okay, so that's the southern sky. If you see Taurus, notice that you're going to be able to see Aldebaran as well. I put those in the northern sky, I guess, because technically they are in the northern sky, or they're on that side of that line. Okay. Northern sky, we got a lot going on in the fall for the northern sky. We're seeing 2/3 of the summer triangle, right? Dave, Capella with Auriga, Orion with Betelgeuse and Rigel. Those are coming up. Those are rising. So you're going to be able to see those in the fall. That's how you know maybe fall is there, is because Orion is coming up and rising over on that eastern horizon. And as we move towards winter, Orion is a winter constellation, and you'll see Orion more in the sky in the winter in the north. Taurus, Gemini, and I talked about that. Oh, that's on there twice. Interesting. Sorry, pals. I was being so thorough, I included it twice. Okay. Can you recognize anything in the south in the winter? I just mentioned that you would be able to see Orion. That's where we started. In the winter, Orion is high in the sky at midnight in December. If you find Orion, you can find the big dog and the little dog, Sirius and Procyon. Okay, we have Aldebaran and Pleiades with Taurus. And so I have this from previous. You can, we're just circling back around, and it goes through that every year. So hopefully that can give you some markers for the sky in different seasons, what you can look for as you study stellarium and you go outside and you use stellarium outside through the upcoming months. Go ahead and look for the different seasonal stars and seasonal star clusters, seasonal constellations, where the zodiacs are at different points in the year, and become more familiar with those.